You know me, I find so much zen in my sewing room. Well, today's tutorial is all about creating a super fun spa set that will get you some zen when you're not in your sewing room too. Let's get started. Today's projects, that's right, yeah, today's projects, we've got two of them for you, are super fun and easy, but I'm gonna show you a couple of other little tricks while we get started here. Now, we're going to make this wonderful neck roll pillow, and it has the poly pellets inside, so it could be heated or cooled, and it is made from the Cuddle fabric from Shannon, and then also Moda has a wonderful 100% Rayon Batik out there, and I've used both fibers on purpose. I'll tell you more why in just a second, but I feel kind of silly with this on my head. We're also doing the eye pillow with a piece of elastic around the back as well to make it secure so that it actually keeps the light out and keeps some pressure on your eyes. And that's part of why we're doing what we're doing today with these fibers. If you did not know, 100% rayon fabric is very cool to the touch. So even though I had this to show you the cool fabric, when I'm using this at home, I really do have the rayon against my skin and the elastic over my head like that because it makes it so wonderful and comforting. Same with the neck roll. So the rayon is meant to go against our body, but we like that soothing texture of the Cuddle, that fun texture. The pile is what I'm trying to say as well. So we also want to use those. Now, the other reason I'm doing this is because when I talk about 100% rayon and I talk about Cuddle, you must be freaking out thinking that is not going to sew together at all. Because of the movement, you might be a little worried. And what I want to show you is a super simple way to do this. So we're just going to start with the width of our goods, which are 44 inches long. And I've got 4.5 inch wide strips cut of both the rayon and of the Cuddle fabric. And as you can see here, I actually have already gone ahead and used my Wonder Clips, and I've put them together with the right sides together. And even while I'm trying to handle this, you can see that things want to shift around a bit, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to do an easy straight stitch with 1/4 inch as I go to my machine. So I have a polyester thread today in the machine because I'm doing more of a gear or a functional piece. And then I'm going to remove that first Wonder Clip as I come over. And I did learn through a lot of testing, my machine ran the best if I have the Cuddle fabric with the back side on my feed dogs. And then I'm going to set this in down here for about 1/4 inch seam allowance to help me keep everything nice and tight. And the other thing is I'm not gonna let this hang off the table. I'm gonna let everything sit up here so that the weight is not dragging. And then I'm just gonna line up these two edges over here. This is going to be a stuffed project. So if there's a little bit of, puckering or gathering, even those things won't show up. But we're just gonna take our time. I'm gonna back stitch up here, and I should have pointed out, we're gonna leave this opening open so we can fill it with the beans later. So here we go. I'm going to go and I'm just going to take about 3-inch stitches at a time. Not 3 inches long, but 3-inch little sections. And then I just kind of recalibrate my fabrics. I'm kind of pinching down here, not worrying about what the rest of the stuff's doing. And I'm just going to sew. I'm trying not to pull or tug on my fabrics. I'm just kind of letting the sewing machine do the work as it feeds through there. None of the mathematics I've given you are crucial to this, but that 4.5 inch width of the tube, we're going to also use this section to cut our eye pillow. So at least that 4.5 inches is important. So we're going to try to maintain that here. Just taking it nice and easy. So here in a second, what I'm going to do, as I'm realigning my fabrics, I'm going to go into caffeinated mode. I'm going to sew all the way down and around at the end and then back, leaving that opening so I can stuff it for you. Let me show you how that works. Okay, so here we are coming back out of caffeinated mode. I'm going to cut that thread and tell you kind of what I've done here real quick. Now, as I was starting to point out before we went to the sewing machine, I was doing my best to get those 4.5 inch wide strips of the rayon and the Cuddle together. But as you could see, as I came around the end, I hadn't quite lined them up. So I've captured, obviously, the Cuddle here with this, but I'm going to need to trim off real quick this bit of rayon. And basically what it was, and I should have pointed this out earlier too, but I get so excited to start getting into the body of the tutorial. The Cuddle is actually about 60 inches long and the Rayon's 44 inches long. So I had already pre-cut those down, but I obviously just didn't get it perfect. Now I've got this wonderful tube. This is the sealed and finished end. This section-ish, 27 inches worth exactly, will be the neck roll portion. So what I actually now want to do is I want to cut off about 29 inches. So I have a little bit to fold under. So this is my magic mark right here. I'm not taking my eye off. And you can see how precise not this tutorial is today, because this is just some super simple little comfort sewing we're doing. So this tube now has been cut at roughly 29 inches, so it'll finish about 27 inches. Let's finish this project now. What we're going to do is we're just going to reach our fingers in here, and we're going to turn this to right sides out. You can nibble or trim those little corners down in there if you wanted to. No real need. Okay. Now, when I get ready to finish this, you could hand sew it. I'm going to physically machine stitch it by turning those edges under about 1 inch, like yay. But before I stitch it completely, what I do is I've made myself a Mylar plastic template funnel. Any kind of funnel will really do. We can put that in there like this, and I can fill this bad boy up with the poly pellets, and it takes almost the entire bag full, but I like to fill the mask first. So we're gonna do all of our filling at the end. I wanted to show you how this is gonna go together, so when we come back to it, I can do that quickly. This is the part I wanna focus on now. We've got our little scrap piece of Rayon and Cuddle together, right? Now, in the description below, there's a link for you. We've created today a fun little spa mask printable, just that shape. It should be about 9 inches across here, like that. If you needed to make it bigger or smaller for your personal size, feel free, of course. What I want to try to do is I want to lay this seam allowance here, and I've got one I've already cut out, the one I used to make my sample. So this right here is basically going to come up along the seam allowance. There, then I'm going to use my little shark rotary cutter here, and I'm going to simply cut the arc as I go around. If the fabric wants to kind of fold up in front of itself, just kind of use your finger to pat it back down. And I'm going to come around here, and I'm going to cut, and if all went well, I've cut all the way around my little spa mask template there with the rotary cutter, and I can set that aside. Make sure you put your cap back on, safety first always, okay? Now that we have that done, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to finish the stitching while everything is still right sides together. So let's head right back over to our sewing machine. We're going to leave ourselves an opening to fill this. Because I'm not the best hand sewer, or the way we're going to top stitch, I don't want the opening in the nose piece. I want the opening out here in the side, and that reminds me, we want to put the elastic in, and the elastic needs to be set into the right sides as well. So I'm going to sneak this open right now for a second and watch this trick. I'm going to sneak it in, and that is about 1 inch down from my seam allowance, and I'm going to sneak a little bit out so I can see it and capture it. And I should have done it on this side because, whoops, I did it right. Going too fast again. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but the minky is best, or the Cuddle fabric, whatever you want to call it, is best on the feed dogs. So I want to start on this side so I can start right here with my feed dogs working for me. Okay. I've got my fingers on that elastic to hold it in place. I'm going to go up past the seam allowance that was created in the straight seam at the top, the one that was there from the tube. I'm going to back stitch over it a couple times to really secure that. And now I'm going to come around here, same 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as I'm catching that elastic, I'm going to stitch over the top of that elastic one more time too to really hold it in place. Now I'm going to make sure I don't capture it again for a while, so I'm going to sneak it out of my way. And now I'm just going to slowly work my way around the mask using that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Only place we really need to worry about that elastic is as we come up into the nose. Just make sure you don't capture it in the nose piece. It gets a little narrow in there. So you kind of come up and then back out. And you can see how wonderfully actually the minky and the rayon sew together. So what I was so scared of before really wasn't a problem at all. Okay, now what I need to do though, is I'm going to stop as I come around this arc. And I'm going to back up and I'm going to cut my threads. Now I'm going to bounce forward about, I'm going to say about 1.5 inches or so, because I want to leave this opening right here, so that's where I can put the beans in there. So I'm going to capture the elastic back in right at my starting point right here, and that will be the opening right there through that spot right there. So here comes the elastic. It should be roughly where it was on the other side. And I want my minky on my feed dogs, my cuddle on my feed dogs. Locking that stitch in again, locking the elastic in a couple times again, and coming back into where the straight stitch was and locking that in, and we are set. So with that all done like that, still was, as I said, right sides together, I'm going to reach in here and start to slowly pull that through. If you're lucky, maybe that end of that elastic will work for me, I don't know. It's kind of stretchy, that's what elastic does. And what I found was about 5% of that bag, and this is a 32-ounce bag that I've got over here of the poly pellets, filled this in. And what I really wanted to do was figure out a good way to top stitch this closed so that I don't have to hand stitch it closed. And so what I'm going to show you today is how to stitch around the eye pillow one more time with all the beans in place. I'm sure you'll be able to do it on the neck roll yourself, but I will point out on mine, because I had it so full, I found it was easiest just to top stitch the one edge that was open for the bean filling. I did not go back and top stitch all along the edges because I want this really heavy. It's the weight on your neck that makes it feel so good. So anyways, I wanted this to use up as much of those beans as possible. So I'm going to teach you how to manipulate the beans as we go around our little eye pillow. We're going to need this here. This will be considered the inappropriate use of a rotary cutter, so please close your eyes right now. I've cut the corner of the bag, so I have got a nice little pour spout, and I also cut a bean, so that was why it was the inappropriate use. And I guarantee that will try to fall over while I'm doing this next part. This for the Murphy's Law of it all. Okay, so now I've got my little funnel in here. I've got my little opening up there. And I'm gonna pour what was roughly about a cup worth of beans. Give it the old wiggle trick. You're slowly filling in there. And the elastic, about 15 inches is how long I cut that elastic, really helps hold the weight on here. Right now, I'm about half full. I want this thing to be about 60% full. So just a little more in there. And that ought to be just about perfect. Okay, excellent. So you can see actually that basically 60% of the mask is full. Now to make life easy, I'm going to turn these edges back under, trying to maintain that arc. I'm coming back to the sewing machine and I'm really trying to make sure that I have the Cuddle fabric against the feed dogs still. I'm going to come out over here and just slide that edge guide out of my way. Come up here, and now I'm going to basically try to keep the stitching or the needle right on the edge of where that seam was. And I back stitch to start. And now what's going to happen, I'm leaving my needle in the down position, and as I come around here with this left hand, I'm starting to feel some of these beans or these pellets trying to get underneath my needle. I really don't want to sew over them, so I'm using my fingers like this as I go in front now to manipulate. And so what I've gotten is a couple of inches of good sewing room. The only tricky part at all is where it kind of comes into that nose piece. So now I'm taking a bunch of these beans and I'm getting them out behind where I was working. And then once I come out of that little spot there, and of course you could always hand sew these closed, but some of us really like doing a lot of this by machine, so we want to figure out the best ways to give you these tutorials where you can do them all by machine as well. Okay, now as I'm coming into my last few stitches, I've noticed that the mask itself, or the beans, is starting to get pretty full. So that 60% is a real good stopping point. And I'm just coming around, locking those stitches in, and that is now all cut out and all complete with the elastic in there for you, and a very, very nice eye pillow and wonderful neck roll for your super simple spa set. Just remember, we love to be in our sewing rooms. Not all sewing projects need to be complicated. These make fantastic gifts. I have received a few over my life and have used them until they're worn out, so it was definitely time to make myself a new set. Try out this 100% rayon. It feels so amazing on your skin. I know you will love it. And once you wake up from your Zen nap, please bounce into those comments below and let me know what you're thinking of this fantastic rayon and what other kinds of super simple sewing projects you'd like to see right here at Man Sewing. Thanks for being a Man Sewing fan. It's great to have you out there encouraging me to create fantastic new content. If you've missed any of the videos, we've got links for you here and here. And while you're checking those out, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss any of the action.